So welcome to this edition of Level Up. Today we're going to talk about disaster planning. Ian's a good reminder for us, so we're going to talk about that. But as always, to get us started, let me know where you're watching from. You can post it in the comments on LinkedIn. You can post it in the comments on YouTube or in the comments on Facebook. But let us know where you're watching from. In this case, it's just me. And if you're watching the replay, let us know where you joined in from. Oh, wrong banner. Let's put that banner up. Where are you watching from? The other thing is this is designed to be a discussion. So please feel free to contribute. I don't want to have to carry all this show by myself today. Wes is out. He's got a toothache, and he was not sure yet what the dentist was going to do to him, but none of the things he mentioned as options sounded like any fun. So let's talk a little bit. And you'll have to excuse me. I have a little bit of a cough today. Okay, so Candida Rich is watching from Florida. Oh, so this is really close to home for you. I live in Florida. So I said, show that. Yeah. Yeah, it is definitely close to home for us. But let's think about, for example, we'll talk about what happened along the Florida South Coast. The town of Fort Myers is devastated. Some of the islands are in even worse shape. So there was a lot of devastation, a lot of areas out of power, maybe out of power for an extended period of time. So the question that we have to think about is, if something like that happened to our business, what is our plan? And it was interesting in preparing for the CompTIA Security Plus course. One of the books that was recommended dealt with planning for disasters. Oh, Wes said hi. Hopefully your jaw's getting better, Wes. But in that book, it related the experience of a company. My asthma is bothering me a little bit today, and talking makes it nice. But it was a limousine company in New York City at 9/11. And the owner of that this particular company that was carried in the store. Hey, Greg, glad to have you with us. In the story, had just gone through a disaster planning process for his company when 9/11 happened. And he immediately, when he saw the first of the Twin Towers collapse, he immediately activated his disaster plan. He started returning equipment to the leasing company. He started laying off people. He started doing all of the things that he could to manage his cash flow. And the result was that as business started coming back, he became one of the biggest limousine companies in New York City because he bought the assets of those that didn't have a plan. And those kinds of things, no matter where we live in the world, we're all subject to disasters. I had a conversation in my service management class last week. We were talking about differing disasters. And one of the guys lives up in the fire country in California, and he said they were going out to check on a facility where they were supposed to install equipment, and the teleco guys were busy stapling fiber optic cables to trees because they had no poles. You know, their poles were all burned, and they didn't have replacement poles, and so all they could do was staple fiber optic. So it doesn't matter where we live, you know, earthquakes, floods, fires, all of these things can result in a tremendous impact, not only to your business, but to surrounding businesses. And so it's so important that we have a plan for ourselves We also have to think about what the impact on our clients, because so we'll go back and look at the impact of Hurricane Ian. In Fort Myers, probably most of those businesses are closed and will be for a while. But if you're an office equipment dealer there and you served a broader territory, you might have clients that are up and running. But whatever the circumstance, here's the question that I'm going to pose for you, something for you to think about. I want you to imagine that you walk up to your corporate headquarters tomorrow and it is gone. Flood, fire, earthquake, hurricane, whatever might happen to it. And the question is, what is the plan? Yeah, Canada's rebuilding after the hurricane. And as well, as West mentioned, the challenge is that it's happening more frequently in different places. But no matter where we live, the question is if something happens that wipes out our physical facility, what is our plan? And we think about some of the things that we need. I'm going to go through and talk about a little bit. And if I miss something, let me know what you guys. Actually, let me do this first. If you have a disaster plan that would cover your building being wiped, I miss West today. Being wiped out. If you have a plan, in the comments, put plan. If you don't, I won't know who you are, so don't put anything in there and it will be okay. You can maintain your anonymity. But if you have a plan, put plan. Because this is so critical. And the first thing, we think about priorities. There are some things that have to happen very quickly. One of the first things, in fact, let me ask this, for those that are watching, what would you say would be one of the first priorities for your company in the case of a disaster? Let's say, again, your building's gone. What would you say is the first priority? Okay, so we have a LinkedIn user with a plan. Very good. So what's your first priority? And I have to be patient because everything's on a time delay. But you think about it. The question is, I don't know if I showed this, but what is going to be your first priority? I'm going to suggest this is probably one of your first priorities. Maybe not the first one, but one of them. And that is to find out if it's a widespread disaster, to make sure all your employees are okay. Oh, hey, Greg. Perfect. The safety of your employees. Okay. I like this one. Communication with customers to set expectations. Sandy said, the employees. So, and think about this, because we're talking about the employees being important. Our main normal channels of communication may be wiped out. So what are some of the other things that you could do? How could you communicate with your employees in the event that you've got widespread carnage around you? And I'll share something that one of the students in my class, their company did, was they had a private Facebook group for the company employees. And so employees that couldn't dial in because the phones are gone, and rather than clogging up the cell phones to everybody, what they did was everybody reported into the Facebook group, what their status was, and if they needed something, those kinds of things. So that's a good example of starting to set up communications. Communications with customers is huge as well. The question is does every manager in your company know how to get the main inbound phone number routed to somebody's cell phone? because if people are calling in needing help, you need to answer. So now that there's a lot of things from the IT side that need to be thought about, because if you use a physical server, do you have a backup off-site that is in good shape, and then do you know what hardware you need to run the backup? So in other words, do you have a plan how you could get a computer in place that you could load the backup on to start accessing the data? If you work in the cloud, and this is just another huge reason why most everybody should be doing business in the cloud, the data in the computer's not gone. But we need to figure out where we are, what needs to be done as far as where are we with customers. One other thing to think about, and this is something that might get missed often, is what's going to be gone if your building is wiped out. I'll give you guys a minute to think about that. So you walk up to your business and the building is wiped out. What are you probably not going to have that you might really need? I can't stand the silence, so I'm going to go ahead and talk. Hopefully, somebody will share this in the chat as well. But what about supplies and parts? If you have to take care of customers' equipment and you don't have supplies and parts, that makes for a challenge. And I think about these things because I'm more on the service side of the business. So what do we need to do? Well, a phone call needs to go very quickly to the manufacturer. West has so this is really cool. It can be used anywhere for text, even if the cellular's down. That's pretty cool. But you need to reach out to the manufacturer if you need parts and supplies. You need to get some of that stuff shipped somewhere pretty quickly, because if your clients are out of toner and you can't get it to them, they will find somebody else that can. They'll start looking. So these are the kinds of things, and I encourage everybody just to think through this process. And this is just a small example of what needs to be in your disaster plan. I could think of several other disasters. I'll name a couple. I don't need any comments back on it. But what happens if somebody driving a company vehicle kills somebody in an accident? What if an employee is injured in a work-related accident? You need to have plans for these kinds of things in place so that you're not having to try to invent it as you go. We've talked a lot about incident response plan in association with IT, but we need to have these same kinds of plans. And so as a corporation or as a company, I would encourage the management team to sit down and start with, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen to us? And when you go through all the worst things, you go to the next worst and the next worst. And when you get to it might rain tomorrow, you can stop. But if you do that, then when something happens, you'll have thought about it. You'll know. Message from Wes there. You'll have an idea, and just the process will help you of going through this and creating it will help you if something unplanned for arises, because you'll start to have some ideas and you'll have thought about it. You also want to make sure that all of the managers have that plan somewhere other than on a computer they don't have access to. Because again, if your power's out, internet's out, you need to have this information in some place where they can access it. So here's the other side of it. In the event of a disaster, what opportunities might exist? So let's think about let's go back to Ian. Along the Gulf Coast in southern Florida, what are businesses going to need as they start to get power back and start to get facilities back? Imagine, if you would, your building was 10 feet underwater. What are the odds that you're going to have the technology functioning that was in the building? So if you think about it, there's going to be a lot of people that need the products and services that your company offers. And I'm not talking about being opportunistic in the sense of taking advantage of anybody, but I am talking about using the resources and the ability you have to start to help people solve problems. And if your good business, your good disaster plan has enabled you to be functional, and your competition is not functional, there are going to be a lot of companies that need help. And so you start to think about, okay, we get our customers taken care of. Yeah, quick startup. Yeah. You think about, what can I do to help companies that are trying to come back in and trying to get their business back together? What do I have in the way of resources that they might need? And how can I effectively help them? Because just as that limo company that we talked about at the start of the show today, just as he was able to pick up the pieces of other companies and pick up their business, the companies that didn't have a good disaster plan may wind up out of business, and their customers are going to need someone that takes care of them. And they'll probably respond really well to a company that is positioned, because they had a good disaster plan, to help them. And then there's one other thing, and I encourage people to think about this, because if you develop really good disaster plans for your company, what other business opportunity might exist? Think about all of the businesses you support. How many of them have a good disaster plan? So even if you did it in the sense of, let's have a free class for our customers, or a free webinar on disaster planning, or you do it as a paid service and help them go through and think about their infrastructure. Again, because we're talking about positioning your company as a company that can help them. And that doesn't mean just shove another copier in the door necessarily, but let's try to figure out services and products and ways we can help our customers for the long term. So what are the services that we could provide that would help them? And disaster planning is something most companies don't have much experience with. So creating a way to build disaster plans and help them, a template perhaps, and help them walk through, okay, what do you have? Okay, well, you got a lot of legacy hardware. Do you think maybe it'd be time to think about upgrading that legacy hardware and moving to the cloud, so that if something like this happened in our area, that you wouldn't have to worry about your technology infrastructure? These and Wes, that's a great suggestion. But a disaster like, for the people that operate in South Florida that had good plans, there's going to be some huge opportunities, some chances for them to grow their business, to establish themselves as experts in the area, and especially if they have a good disaster plan, of helping others to do the same thing. It's also a good topic that you could use for speaking opportunities at Chamber of Commerce's and things. So if you had a good plan and you talk about how you used it, your story might lead some opportunities there as well. So again, I encourage, absolutely, Sandy, help them right there. own plan. That is so valuable. And like I said, you can do it as a free service for your customers. Says, hey, we love you. We want to make sure you're okay. Or you could do it for a nominal fee and turn it into a little bit of a profit opportunity. But whatever you do, if you help them create a disaster plan, you've done something that will cement that customer relationship. Yes, absolutely. Okay. I keep running out of air, so I'm going to talk a little bit about next week's show and then say goodbye. Bye. But we have Shannon Prosite. She's an expert in utilizing press releases and creating publicity. And so she's going to talk with us next week. We're going to talk about, as an adjunct, let's say, to your marketing plan, is how can you get your company's name in the press, in and around you, and even on the national level, because doing that will help to cement your position as thought leaders and experts. And that's always a good thing. Thanks for joining us. We'll say goodbye to everybody, and we'll see everybody next week.